Happy Halloween, everybody. What's going on, you guys? TBR here, back yet again with another King of Fighters All-Star video. And in today's video, of course, it's Saturday, so you all know what that means. It's the Saturday chat and chill. But before we get into all of that and more, make sure if you guys are new here to the channel and you enjoy daily King of Fighters All-Star content such as this, please smash that like button and subscribe. And let's go ahead and get into this week's topic. And this is going to be one that I get a feeling a lot of people have been waiting for me to talk about. It's something I've alluded to, something I've mentioned, something I've touched on, but never something I've done a dedicated video to. And I figured that this week was as good a week as any. So this week we are going to be talking about a topic that a lot of people out there have some very harsh feelings towards, and that is going to be the timing of banners and what Netmarble can do to improve in order to make the game just that much better for everyone involved. Now, of course, when it comes to the limited banner model, everybody pretty much knows my opinion at this point. If I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times in the past year. It's one of those situations with the limited banners and the timing of them where I really am not a big fan, and I think that they either need to A, give us more time with these limited banners, or they need to give us more time in between limited banners, which would basically amount to the same thing. However, when it comes to the limited banner model, it seems as though it is here to stay, at least in some small part. It would appear that they would be open to making small amenities and changes here and there, but when it comes to the actual limited banner system, I don't believe that Netmarble has any incentive to get away from it, nor do I believe that they feel like it is a situation where they would be in good shape if they did. So at this point, I don't think that the limited banner model is going to go away, but I do believe that there are things that they could do in order to improve upon it that wouldn't require them to do so. And that's kind of what I want to talk about in today's video, and kind of give Netmarble a little bit of free advice. As the joke over on the Discord goes, Netmarble must watch my videos. I don't believe it, but hey, if they do, maybe they'll see this, maybe they'll hear this, and maybe they'll find it to be a good idea. Who knows? Maybe it's a bad idea, but either way, I'm going to put it on the internet for everybody to talk about, so here we go. So when it comes to limited banners, the first thing that I want to talk about is the amount of time that we have between limited banners. So basically at this point, it has become a situation with these limited banners where we have about a week in between. It used to be that we would have about 2 weeks, but anymore it seems like it has shortened itself to no more than a week, maybe a week and a half, until we get another limited banner after one has expired, which I understand Netmarble wanting to continue to get new content out as quick as possible. However, I do believe that what this has caused is caused a major fatigue amongst the community when it comes to limited banners in general, and I think that it has also caused a few issues in the background at Netmarble itself. I believe that we've seen a bit of a sign of that recently with this latest special signature banner, where it seems as though some of the content that they wanted to roll out with the banner itself ended up getting delayed a few days, but they decided to roll the banner out regardless, just so that way they could have a banner going and start collecting that sweet, sweet King and Yuri money. Now, of course, that last part is all speculation on my behalf, because of course we don't have any confirmation whatsoever that that had anything to do with why they split up this content. But have we ever seen a limited banner in the past where we've only had the banner and never any of the other updates that should be surrounding it along with it? I think not. So it's a bit of an interesting situation. One might argue that Halloween is also this weekend, so maybe they wanted to separate the Halloween content from the SS banners content. However, I would argue as a counter argument there that if they wanted to do that, then why wouldn't they just wait an extra week and release the SS Volume 4 next week after the Halloween events had all gone away? Now, I'm not going to dwell on this particular topic because of course there's no way for any of us out here to know really what was going on in the boardroom over at Netmarble HQ when it came to this decision. It could have very little to nothing to do with anything like this. However, we'll never know. But another thing that we've talked about over the course of the past couple of weeks is the fact that Netmarble tends to release a lot of content around these limited banners, things that seem to tie in loosely to these limited banners, but are very flimsily themed towards them, meaning things like the battle passes, for instance. They'll release a battle pass that seems like it's a retread or a rerun of every other battle pass that they've released for the past several months, but they never seem to want to theme them around the actual limited banner, despite the fact that they release them around the limited banner, which seems like a missed opportunity, especially at Netmarble. If they're wanting to make more money, you would think that they would try to theme these around the specific SS or BS banners, maybe put a BS generic on there or an SS generic, depending on what type of banner is running at the time. There's all sorts of things that they could do, but it seems like they've missed the boat each and every single time, and it almost feels like a lot of the time they try to rush these things out and not theme them just so that they can get content out, but it does make it look a little bit sloppy, and it does appear as if they are leaving a lot of money on the table when they do so, because as I've told people before, as I've heard from people before, and as I've said before, when it comes to these passes in particular, if they would just theme them after these banners and put generic memories on there, a lot more people would be enticed to buy them, and a lot more people would be pretty happy with going in on those things for the value proposition that Netmarble is laying out there. Now, speaking of BS and SS generic memories, another thing that seems to be kind of odd when it comes to the way Netmarble schedules this stuff is they tend to want to release a carnival or some sort of event where we are awarded with a BS or an SS generic memory. However, they don't ever seem to time it to where it releases with the same update as the actual banner itself. Now, this is a major issue for the community when you consider the fact that a lot of the time Netmarble likes to do these carnivals, specifically ones where you need to summon characters because you need memories, or you need to be summoning for cards. And honestly, not releasing those around the actual limited banner is very anti-player. The reason why I say that is because Netmarble knows that we are going to be probably pulling for these characters well before any sort of carnival comes around, so by the time that carnival drops within a week or two after the release, typically people have already used the rubies or whatever type of resources they were planning on using on the limited banner to summon, whether it's for the cards or the characters. And so by the time we get those carnivals, most people have already used their resources and therefore do not feel incentivized to be pulling anymore, and then have to start scraping the barrel in order to find ways in order to get through them. So it would seem to me that Netmarble has a bit of an issue when it comes to timing and theming things, and part of me feels as though it might be having to do with the fact that they tend to rush these limited banners out so often. So now that we've laid out many of the reasons why the limited banner system itself right now is a bit of a problem, let's get into a few solutions. So the first solution that I am going to throw out there to you guys is one that I have touched on in the past, but I wanted to elaborate on it here because I have kind of thought about it, and I think that there is a system that Netmarble could lift from a lot of other games that are currently running that have been extremely successful, take their model when it comes to introducing new banners, and really run with it, and I think that it would be best for everybody involved. So let's go ahead and talk about what that is. So the thing that I think Netmarble would really benefit from at this point, because we know that Netmarble has decided that they want to re-release these limited banners frequently with these new banners, kind of have them coincide with each other, which is not necessarily a bad thing because it does give new players or returning players a chance at characters that they might have missed. However, I think that it might be a little too much at one time, and I do feel like that if they separated them, this would help them in a huge way. So here is my proposition to Netmarble on what they could do to improve upon the limited banner system as a whole. So basically, what they should do is they should start releasing new limited banners on intervals of every 3 weeks. So basically, for a 3-week block, you're going to have a re-release of a banner. And that re-release, say for instance, we'll just use an example, we'll say is SS Volume 2 featuring Kyo and Yuri. So you have Kyo and Yuri as your rerun for 3 weeks. Maybe you rerun their Rush Dungeon, rerun whatever events were going on at the time. That isn't to say that you can't release new events as well in that same amount of time in that 3-week block. You can do that, that's just fine, no problem. However, that 3 weeks is going to do two things. It's going to give those new returning players a chance to pull for these characters. It's going to give people that have already gotten these characters 3 weeks to save. And it's also going to give people that want memories for these characters that might have already picked them up and might be missing a few memories, 3 weeks to pick up some memories for them. or to consider their options. Along with this 3-week rerun block, they could also go ahead and re-release the ability for people to awaken these characters for the first time and get their stones, which would also address another major complaint that the community has had for a while now. Now, besides the benefits that this would offer to the community at large, because let's face it, free-to-play players cannot keep up with the current system if they want to try and keep up with the meta, especially if you're somebody who plays PvP. You are even in it even worse, because honestly, PvP has much more of a turnover with its meta than PvE does, because whenever a character drops, it's always going to be just as good as it's always been. It's never going to not be able to clear whatever content it can clear, but when it comes to PvP characters, those characters can get outdated and phased out and truncated by other character releases very quickly. So it tends to be a problem for PvE, PvP players in general. It doesn't really matter what side of the fence you're on. And then when it comes to the whales versus the free-to-plays, whales only have a finite amount of resources to be dropping into this game to begin with, and the last thing that any game wants is whale fatigue. And free-to-play players, well, let's face it, they're always going to be fatigued if you are not giving them at least some sort of heads up or some sort of gap of time in order to be preparing, nor is it going to be a situation where if you are not going to be giving them more than what you have been with some of these time-limited rubies, where they're going to be happy about these releases on the schedule that they've been on. Now, beyond the key benefits that this would obviously offer towards the community, let's talk about how this new system would benefit Netmarble. Now, when it comes to rerunning banners and doing it in 3-week blocks and intervals, I think that the obvious thing here would be that it would give Netmarble a full 3 weeks to sit down and really work on making sure that whatever that new content is that's coming up after that 3-week block of reruns would actually be something that is feeling cohesive, organized, and not buggy. And that's the biggest thing I feel like right there, because it does tend, as we've already mentioned, to feel like that some of this stuff feels rushed. So if Netmarble were to give themselves an extra couple of weeks in between to sit down and really work on making this stuff feel cohesive and organized, but also to sit down and debug some of this stuff and make sure that it's in a good place before it's released, I think that that can only benefit everyone involved, including Netmarble, because if they were to do that, that would cut down in a huge way on some of the complaints from their customer base, and that's already considering the fact that they'd be eliminating a lot of the complaints from people about the timing of these limited banners with this particular system itself. So there's a lot of benefits that Netmarble could reap if they were to want to do something along these lines, but in the end, it really just comes down to whether or not Netmarble feels like it would be beneficial to them, and I really don't see any way it wouldn't be. Because let's face it, even if you're someone who doesn't like the limited banner model, it is a success. Netmarble has reaped a lot of rewards from it, and they are making a lot of money from it, which is great. That's a good thing for the game, and we should all agree with that and want that for Netmarble, because we want to see this game stick around. However, when it comes to the actual model itself, while it might be something that is going to be a success, you can always improve upon success, and honestly, the way that you can become a failure really quick is to lay back and get complacent and to look at that success and not want to change, because at the end of the day, there are always going to be things that are going to be negative about anything, and if you don't look for those things and try to improve upon them, much less when you have thousands of people across the world who are playing with your product and telling you the same thing over and over and over again, if you just allow that to fall on deaf ears and you ignore it, especially when you're dependent upon that group of people to be financing you and keeping you in business, well, that could be a recipe for disaster. So if Netmarble could take any advice from me at this point, I would hope that it would be this one. I hope that this is something that at the end of the day, at least kind of gets a conversation started, because I know that this is something a lot of people complain about, and I'm not saying that this is the perfect solution. I'm not saying that this is the only solution, but I'm just saying that if you think outside the box, if you look to some of these other successful games that are wildly successful, more successful than even yours, for some tips and advice, you might find that they have some good strategies. But with all of that being said, you guys, I'll see you all in the next one. Have a happy and safe Halloween. Y'all take care. Peace.
Continue.